What if the greatest neglect in your life isn't happening to you anymore, but it's happening through you? Okay? What if the person, you guys, what if the person continuing to ignore your needs, silence, guess what? Your emotions, yes, that continues to ignore what you are trying to tell them and causes you to push through exhaustion, put everyone else first. What if that's you? Okay? What if that is you? Okay? Welcome to Trauma Talks, you guys. I'm Krystal Boothe. Okay, and today, guess what? Understanding childhood neglect through trauma, attachment, and neuroscience is what we're going to talk about today. So not because you don't love yourself. This isn't because you don't love yourself, you guys. It's not because you are weak or it's not because you're broken. No. But guess what? It's because somewhere in your childhood, somewhere way back in your childhood, your nervous system learned that your needs were the least important in the room. Yes, maybe it's because you became the peacekeeper, the peacemaker. Maybe you became the one who was the caretaker, okay? Or maybe you became the responsible one, okay? And maybe it's because you had to be the strong one all the time. And maybe you became the absolute rescuer of everyone in your family. You became everything everyone else needed. Yes, depending on who it was. While no one became what you needed. Eventually, you stopped asking yourself what you needed. And today, we're going to talk about one of the most overlooked trauma responses that most people don't even pay attention to this one. It is the fear of neglect, you guys. The fear of neglect, not the fear of someone hurting you. The fear that no one will notice when you're hurting. No one will notice when you need someone. That no one will come for you. That no one will care. And here's what I hope you'll discover today. What I hope you discover, that you are not difficult. No, you're not difficult. And you're definitely not needy. You're not selfish. No, you're responding exactly the way a brilliant nervous system learned to survive. Okay, so that's the beautiful news, you guys. That's the beautiful news. What was learned can also be healed. All right, so that's what we're going to get into today. So let me define what is neglect. Most people hear the words neglect and think about children who were fed or who weren't fed, or they weren't clothed. Those are certainly forms of neglect, absolutely. But today I'm talking about something much quieter. It's a quieter form of neglect. It's called emotional neglect. Emotional neglect happens whenever a child's inner world is repeatedly unseen. You get that? Their inner world is repeatedly unseen. It's when your tears weren't comforted, when your fears weren't explored, and when your excitement wasn't celebrated. Your questions were not welcome, and your emotions became inconvenient. Sometimes your parents loved you deeply. Love wasn't always the problem. Capacity was. Parents can love their children and still lack the emotional regulation to truly see them. You understand? Okay, so maybe they were overwhelmed by depression. Okay, I know this one very well. Maybe they were overwhelmed by being in a domestic violence relationship, or maybe they have alcohol or drug addiction, mental illness, or just financial hardships, or some unresolved trauma of their own. They weren't intentionally trying to neglect you, but your nervous system doesn't measure intention. No, your nervous system measures experiences, and repeated experiences become expectations. Yes, they become expectations for you in adulthood. So how a child brain interprets neglect. This is where developmental psychology becomes so fascinating. Children often have the ability to think like adults. An adult might say, my mother was traumatized. Right. They might be aware of that. Their mom was traumatized. My father had PTSD. They didn't know how. No, they didn't know how. A 6-year-old can't think that way. No, a 6-year-old is not really understanding all that. Children are biologically wired to protect attachment. This is biological, you guys. It's very necessary. Connection and attachment. Because attachment equals, guess what? Survival. And if a child believes caregivers can't protect me, their inner world would absolutely collapse. So guess what happens? So instead of realizing that, or instead of coming to that conclusion, their brain reaches a different conclusion. There must be something wrong with me. I'm the problem. So I'm too emotional. I'm too much. I ask for too much. Okay? I'm not important. Okay? This is where shame is born. Yes, this is where shame is born. Okay? Not because shame is true. Not because shame is true. Guess what? But because shame protects the attachment. Okay? Shame protects the person from believing that there's something wrong with their parent. So the child sacrifices their identity to preserve the relationship. You get that? So think about how heartbreaking this is. You guys, this is really heartbreaking, okay? So let's talk about interpersonal neurobiology. Dr. Dan Siegel teaches that our brains develop in relationships. We aren't born with fully developed emotional regulation. We borrow it from our caregivers. You get that? We borrow our emotional regulation from our caregivers. So when a baby cries, a regulated parent picks them up. Yes, a regulated parent picks you up. A parent calm nervous system helps organize the baby's nervous system. Guess what? That's what the baby learns how to regulate from. So this is called co-regulation. Over thousands of moments start to add up. The child brain begins to learn something. I'm safe, okay? My emotions make sense. Someone comes when I hurt. You see that? It starts to pick up on that. So that's a secure attachment. But what happens when no one comes? The brain adapts to this as well, okay? The amygdala becomes more vigilant. Like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? A stress response becomes easier to activate. You see? So the stress response activates. The child begins anticipating disappointment instead of comfort. They actually anticipate it. The brain isn't malfunctioning. It is adapting. I want to change my mindset. But healing begins with changing your relationship to yourself. That's where it starts, okay? So imagine your younger self sitting in front of you to its environment. So let's talk about the fear of neglect. Now imagine growing up with that nervous system. Every relationship gets filtered through one question. Will someone be there for me? Will someone be there for me? Okay? Not consciously. This isn't a conscious thing. It's unconscious. It's an automatic unconscious thing. You may become anxious when someone doesn't text you back. Okay? Not because of the text, you guys, but because your nervous system remembers. Guess what your nervous system remembers? No one comes. That's what your nervous system remembers. You may overfunction in relationships. Yes, just to make sure that people show up. Not because you're controlling. No, because you're terrified that if you stop giving, guess what? You'll be forgotten. So you don't stop giving. This is why trauma survivors often become incredible caregivers. Okay? They're trying to prevent someone else from feeling the way they felt. Yes, they don't want people to feel the way they felt. But there's a hidden cost to this, you guys. There's a major hidden cost. They never learned to care for themselves. That's the problem here, okay? So let's talk about self-neglect, okay? This is huge. Here's one of the saddest things that trauma does, you guys. This is one of the saddest parts, okay? It teaches you to become the person who continues the neglect. It teaches you that. That's what happens. You ignore your exhaustion. Yes, you ignore your needs. You dismiss your own feelings. You minimize your own pain. You tell yourself, guess what? It's not that bad. That's what you always tell yourself. You make excuses. I'll deal with it later. Everyone else needs me right now. I need to help everybody else, okay? Without realizing something, you guys. Without realizing, guess what you don't realize? You're treating yourself exactly the way your emotional world was treated growing up. Okay, that's how you treat yourself, okay? Not because you're cruel to yourself, okay? But because your brain believes that this is normal, okay? Is normal behavior, okay? So let's get into self-empathy. This is why I teach self-empathy, you guys. Most people try to heal by changing their thoughts. That's what they try to do. Maybe she's 8, 9 years old. Maybe she's 10. Hey, okay. Maybe she's 15. It doesn't matter, okay? But she's scared, okay? She's lonely. She's exhausted from trying to be the adult. Instead of fixing her, sits beside her and simply says, instead of fixing her, sit beside her and simply say, I see you. I want you to try that. Sit beside yourself and say, I see you. And say your name. I'm here for you. Tell me what today felt like. Be there for yourself like that. Try that self-empathy exercise. Take your time when you do this, you guys. Okay? Say, I'm listening to you. And you can put your name in there, like Krystal or whatever. You don't have to earn my attention. You don't have to be strong for me. You get that? That's what you talk. Just talk to yourself, okay? Begin to try this, okay? See how you feel. You deserve someone to notice you, okay? And I notice you. I see you, okay? You do what happens when you do this, you guys? If you do this consistently, you need to do it, okay? You're creating, guess what? The secure attachment your nervous system has been longing for. Secure attachment that your nervous system has been longing for. Not by pretending the past didn't happen. No, that's not what you're doing. But by responding differently in the present. Okay? That's what you do. You respond differently in the present. Okay? All right? So let's continue. All right? All right. Thank you guys for joining me on Trauma Talks. I really appreciate it, you guys. Okay? So let's continue. All right? What have you experienced in the past? Okay, when this has happened, okay? So now we're going to get into the new covenant. As children, many of us made silent promises around this neglect. I'll never need anyone, okay? These are the things that you do in order to try to mitigate this neglect. I'll never be a burden, okay? Those silent promises. Take those silent covenants and silent promises are serious, you guys. So take this, notice this one. I'll take care of everyone. All right? We're gonna work on that today. We're gonna work on that. I'll always be strong. I'm protecting my family. Okay, those are inner promises. Those are inner vows that help you survive during a very difficult time in your life when you were being severely neglected. But survival isn't the same as healing. So today you can make a different promise, okay? I promise to notice my own pain. Start with that one. I promise to notice my own pain. I promise to care for my needs, okay? I promise not to abandon myself. I promise to ask for help when I need it, okay? I promise to ask for help when I need it. And I promise that my worth is not measured by how much I sacrifice. My worth is not measured by that, okay? All right? These are great, okay? So thank you guys for joining me on Trauma Talks today, okay? All right, so today's conversation, it stirred up something. If it stirred up something inside of you, I want you to remember this, okay? The child inside you was never asking for too much. No, it wasn't asking for too much. It was actually asking for exactly what it was supposed to be receiving. Okay, she wasn't too emotional. No, okay? Or too needy. No. Oh, I was just too needy. That's why they acted like. No, you were not too needy. You were not too sensitive. You were asking for exactly what every child needs. Okay? Love and attention. Yes. Validation, safety. Okay? All of that. Absolutely. Okay? So thank you guys for joining me on Trauma Talks today. Okay? And if this really resonated with you, this comforted you in a way, I want you guys to like, share, and subscribe. Okay? All right? Because protection, presence, that's what you deserve. And if no one consistently gave you those things to you, that was never a reflection of your worth. It was never a reflection of your worth, okay? It was a reflection of what the adults around you were not able to give as you actually needed, okay? So thank you guys for joining me on Trauma Talks today, okay? And if you have an opportunity to become that safe, in that safe place with yourself or whatever, over this moment that you spent with me, every time you slow down a little bit, notice that part of yourself. Every time you notice those emotions, guess what? You're coming out of the self-abandonment. You're coming out of the disconnection from yourself. So every time you choose rest instead of restlessness, striving, every time you speak to yourself with the kindness instead of the criticism, you guys, you're going to see the change. You're going to start to see the change. So if you're teaching yourself this, your nervous system is going to have a new truth. Your nervous system is going to have a new truth. When I hurt, someone comes. It's going to start believing that. Oh, when I hurt, someone comes. And now that someone is me. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Trauma Talks. I'm Krystal Boothe. And guess what? If this message resonated with you, share it with someone, okay? Go ahead and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you guys, all right, healing doesn't begin when someone else, guess what, finally sees you. No, that's not when healing begins. Healing begins when you stop overlooking yourself. That's when healing really begins, okay? And we'll see you next time in the next video, okay? Thank you guys, okay? Bye-bye.